The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched like a cathedral made of crystal and light. 12 towering thrones surrounded a central platform where beings from across the galaxy gathered to make decisions that affected billions of lives. Today, they had called this emergency session for one reason: humanity. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the center of the hall, her small human form dwarfed by the massive alien representatives around her. She wore her best diplomatic uniform, dark blue with gold trim, and kept her face calm despite the hostile stares directed at her. She had expected this day would come eventually. Humanity's rapid expansion across the galaxy had not gone unnoticed. Zethkar of the Vorthak rose from his crystalline throne. His body looked like living diamond, refracting the chamber's lights into rainbow patterns across the walls. When he spoke, his voice rang like crystal bells, beautiful but cold. "Human representative," Zethkar began, "we have gathered today to address a growing concern. Your species has spread across 37 worlds in less than 200 of your years. This expansion is unprecedented and dangerous." Sarah nodded politely. "Honored Counselor, humanity has followed all established protocols for colonization. We have avoided inhabited systems and have maintained peaceful relations with all species we have encountered." A harsh laugh echoed from the Krellian section. Thex Min, the reptilian warrior diplomat, leaned forward on his obsidian throne. His scales gleamed like armor in the dim light. "Peaceful? You multiply like a plague across the galaxy. Your ships appear in new systems every month. Your people build cities where there was only empty space before." "We seek to better ourselves and find new homes for our growing population," Sarah replied. "Is this not what all species do when they reach for the stars?" High Regent Valthun of the ethereal Xantharians floated above her throne, her translucent form shimmering like a mirage. "Other species expand with wisdom and restraint. They seek permission from the Council. They accept guidance from their elders. You humans act as if you own the galaxy." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had studied these beings for years, learning their languages, their customs, their prejudices. She knew this conversation was not really about expansion or protocols. It was about fear. The older species feared what humanity might become. "What is it you wish from us?" Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer. Zethkar stood to his full height, nearly 3 meters tall. His crystalline form blazed with inner light as he delivered what could only be called an ultimatum. "The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision. Humanity will cease all expansion beyond your current territories. You will surrender administrative control of 18 of your colony worlds to Council oversight. You will accept permanent advisors from the Council to guide your future development, and you will reduce your military forces to defensive levels only." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah felt her heart beating faster, but she kept her expression neutral. Around the chamber, the alien representatives watched her reaction with various forms of satisfaction. They expected her to beg, to negotiate, to show the fear they believed humans should feel when confronted by their betters. "These are significant requests," Sarah said carefully. "I will need to consult with my government." "These are not requests," Thexmin growled. "These are requirements. Your compliance is not optional." "Of course," Sarah replied, "but surely the Council understands that such important matters require proper consideration. My people value careful thought and consultation." Zethkar's light dimmed slightly. "You have 30 standard galactic days to comply. After that time, the Council will take whatever action is necessary to ensure galactic stability." The threat was clear. Submit or face the consequences. Sarah bowed her head, respectfully. "I understand the Council's position. I will carry your words to Earth immediately." "See that you do," Valthun whispered, her voice like wind through leaves. "And understand, human, that this decision comes from a place of wisdom. Your species is young and reckless. You do not understand the delicate balance that keeps peace. In the galaxy, we have maintained order for 10,000 years. We know what is best." Sarah almost smiled at that. 10,000 years of order. 10,000 years of the same species controlling everything, deciding who could expand and who could not, who deserved new worlds, and who had to stay in their assigned place. It was a very convenient system for those already at the top. "I thank the Council for its wisdom," Sarah said. "I will depart immediately to deliver your message." As she turned to leave, she caught the exchange of satisfied looks between the Council members. They believed they had solved their human problem with typical efficiency. Issue an ultimatum. Wait for compliance. Maintain the status quo. It had worked for 10,000 years. Why should this time be different? Sarah walked through the crystal corridors toward the docking bay where her ship waited. Her security detail, 2 Marines in dress uniforms, fell into step beside her. Neither asked questions, but she could see the tension in their faces. They had heard everything through their communication links. "Ma'am," whispered Sergeant Rodriguez, "are we really going to—" Sarah cut him off with a slight shake of her head. The Council's surveillance systems were everywhere in this station. They would have time to talk freely once they were back in space. Her ship, the diplomatic vessel Harmony, was a modest craft by galactic standards. The Council probably saw it as another sign of human primitive technology. Let them think that. Sarah had learned long ago that it was useful to be underestimated. As the Harmony undocked from the Council station, Sarah finally allowed herself to relax. She settled into her captain's chair and activated the ship's most sensitive communication, array. The call she was about to make would change everything. "Admiral Mitchell," she said when the encrypted connection established. "They took the bait. Full ultimatum, exactly as we predicted. 30 days. The grizzled face of Admiral Jackson Mitchell appeared on her screen. Behind him, she could see the bridge of the heavy cruiser Constitution, one of humanity's newest and most advanced warships. The Council had no idea ships like it even existed. "Understood, Ambassador. And their demands?" "Half our colonies, permanent oversight, military reduction, the full Imperial package." Mitchell nodded grimly. "Just like the Altarian hegemony tried to pull on the Deltans 60 years ago. These people really don't learn new tricks, do they? Why should they? It's worked for 10,000 years. Sarah leaned forward. "Admiral, are we ready?" "We've been ready for 50 years, Sarah. The question is whether we should feel guilty about what's going to happen to them." Sarah thought about the arrogant faces in the Council chamber, the casual way they had dismissed human rights and freedoms, the assumption that humanity would simply roll over and accept whatever scraps they were offered. "They made their choice," she said finally. "We gave them decades to treat us as equals. They chose to see us as subordinates instead." "Roger that. I'll pass the word. Operation Tabula Rasa is now active. How long until you reach Earth?" 18 hours at maximum burn. I want to brief the President and the Security Council before the news leaks." "It won't leak," Mitchell said confidently. "We've been planning this day for too long to let loose lips ruin it now." As the call ended, Sarah looked out at the stars streaming past her ship. Somewhere out there, in hidden bases and concealed fleets, humanity was preparing to show the galaxy something it had never seen before. The Galactic Council thought they understood humans. They thought they knew what Earth's species was capable of. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The countdown had begun. In 30 days, the galaxy would be a very different place. Sarah just hoped that when the dust settled, it would be a better one. The Council chamber felt different after the human ambassador left. The tension that had filled the air during the confrontation gave way to a sense of satisfaction among the 12 representatives. They had handled the situation with their usual efficiency and authority. Zethkar's crystalline form still glowed with the satisfaction of a job well done. He turned to his fellow council members, his voice carrying the musical tone that his species used to express pleasure. "That went better than expected. The humans showed proper respect for our authority. I believe we will have their compliance within the deadline." Thexmin stretched his massive frame and let out what passed for a laugh among the Krellians. His reptilian features were relaxed for the first time in weeks. "Did you see the fear in her eyes when we delivered the ultimatum? These mammals understand power when it is properly displayed." High Regent Valthun drifted closer to the central platform, her translucent form shimmering with what the Zentharians called contentment patterns. The intelligence reports were accurate. Humanity is indeed a young species, barely past their primitive stages. 2,000 years since they developed writing systems. 300 since they achieved spaceflight. They are children playing with tools they do not fully understand. Around the chamber, other council members voiced their agreement. The Makari delegation, insectoid beings with compound eyes that saw in spectrums beyond human comprehension, clicked their approval. The Sularian representatives, energy beings contained in mechanical bodies, pulsed with satisfied light patterns. Even the normally cautious Telrani, aquatic creatures in environmental suits filled with their homeworld's ammonia-rich atmosphere, bubbled with something approaching confidence. Counselor Nexus, the artificial intelligence that represented the machine worlds, processed the situation with its usual logical precision. Analysis complete. Human technological development follows predicted patterns for a recently spacefaring species. Their ships utilize fusion drives and basic gravity manipulation. Their weapons are primarily kinetic and directed energy systems. No evidence of exotic matter manipulation or dimensional engineering. Exactly as expected, added Elder Corthane of the ancient Virelian collective. Her six-legged form, covered in what looked like living metal, had remained mostly silent during the confrontation. At 4,000 years old, she was one of the oldest beings in the chamber. I have seen dozens of species reach this stage. They always believe they are ready for the galaxy. They never are. Thexman stood and began pacing, his heavy footsteps echoing in the chamber. The humans have been lucky so far. They found empty systems to colonize. They avoided contact with the major powers. They stayed in the quiet sectors where nothing important happens. But now they are pushing into regions that matter, systems with strategic value, trade routes, resource worlds. Which is why we acted when we did, Zethkar said. Better to establish boundaries now than to fight a war later. The irony of that statement would not become apparent until much later. Valthun accessed the holographic display at the center of the chamber. Star charts appeared, showing human space as a small cluster of systems on the outer rim of the galaxy. Their territory looked tiny compared to the vast empires represented by the council members. 37 worlds, she mused. The Krellian Empire controls over 2,000 systems. The Vorthak Crystalline Union encompasses 500 star clusters. Even the smallest of our member species governs more territory than all of humanity combined, yet they act as if they deserve a place at our table. They will learn their place, Thexman growled. All species do, eventually. What none of them knew was that at that very moment, deep in the void between stars, something was stirring. In asteroid fields that sensors had marked as empty, around dead stars that no one bothered to visit, hidden in the shadows of gas giants, where no ships were supposed to be. Admiral Jackson Mitchell stood on the bridge of the heavy cruiser Constitution, watching displays that showed the true scope of humanity's preparations. The ship itself was invisible to Council sensors, wrapped in stealth fields that had been developed from captured alien technology and improved with human engineering. Signal from Ambassador Chen confirmed, Admiral, reported his communications officer. Operation Tabula Rasa is active. Mitchell nodded and turned to the holographic display that dominated the bridge. It showed not just the human systems that the Council knew about, but the dozens of hidden bases, secret shipyards, and concealed fleets that had been built over the past 50 years. Status report, Mitchell ordered. Ghost Fleet Alpha is in position in the Kepler Void, came the reply from his operations officer. 200 ships fully fueled and armed. Ghost Fleet Beta is holding position in the Magellan Dark. Another 150 vessels. Ghost Fleet Gamma is distributed across 17 different hiding spots in neutral space. Mitchell smiled grimly. The Council thought they knew about human military capabilities. They had seen the patrol ships, the colony defense platforms, the small escort vessels that protected human trade routes. What they had not seen were the ships that had been built in secret, using technology that humanity had quietly acquired through decades of careful intelligence work. And our assets in Council space? Mitchell asked. All active and reporting. We have listening posts in 14 Council systems, intelligence networks in 8 different species governments, full electronic surveillance on 11 major military installations. This was the part that would shock the Council most. They assumed that humans were too young and naive to understand galactic politics. They thought Earth's species was too trusting to engage in the kind of espionage that older civilizations took for granted. They were wrong. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the head of human intelligence operations, had spent 30 years building the networks that now gave humanity eyes and ears throughout Council space. Her agents looked like traders, diplomats, scientists, and tourists. They spoke alien languages fluently, they understood alien cultures intimately, and they had been gathering information for decades. The Council meeting is proceeding as predicted. Dr. Vasquez reported from her position aboard a disguised intelligence ship. They believe they have successfully intimidated us. Their military is not on alert. Their fleets remain in standard patrol positions. Mitchell turned to his tactical officer. Assessment of Council military capabilities? Significant in raw numbers, sir. The 3rd Enforcement Fleet alone has over 200 ships, but their tactics are standardized. Their technology has not advanced significantly in the past century. They rely on overwhelming force and intimidation rather than innovation. And they have never faced an opponent who knew their playbook, Mitchell added. This was humanity's greatest advantage. While the Council species had spent centuries or millennia perfecting their military doctrines, they had grown predictable. They fought the same way, used the same formations, followed the same strategies that had worked against primitive species for thousands of years. But humans had been studying those strategies. Every battle the Council had fought in the past 2 centuries had been analyzed, Every tactic had been cataloged. Every weakness had been identified. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving coded transmissions from our deep cover assets in the Vorthak Union. The Council is already planning their military response. They intend to send the 3rd Enforcement Fleet to New Geneva system as a show of force." Mitchell nodded. New Geneva was one of humanity's newer colonies, chosen specifically because it appeared vulnerable. The Council would see it as an easy target, a place where they could demonstrate their power without risking significant casualties. They had no idea that it was exactly where humanity wanted them to go. "Send the word to all commands," Mitchell ordered. "The Council has made their move. Now, we make ours." Across human space, messages began to flow through channels that the Council did not know existed. Secret bases powered up their reactors. Hidden ships began to move through hyperspace routes that did not appear on any galactic charts. Intelligence networks activated protocols that had been prepared for this day. The countdown had begun. In less than 30 days, the Galactic Council would learn what happened when you threatened a species that had been preparing for this moment for half a century. But for now, they continued their meeting, confident in their power, secure in their assumptions, and completely unaware that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The humans were coming, and they were bringing friends that the Council never knew existed. The emergency session of the Earth Security Council convened in the secure chambers beneath Geneva, 3 levels underground, and protected by the most advanced shielding technology humanity possessed. President Maria Santos sat at the head of the oval table, her weathered face showing the strain of leading Earth through its most dangerous period since the Resource Wars. Around the table sat the most powerful people in human space: Defense Minister Williams, Intelligence Director Chen, Colonial Affairs Administrator Park, and Admiral Mitchell, who had arrived just hours before via high-speed courier ship. The holographic displays showed star charts, fleet positions, and intelligence reports that painted a picture of the crisis they now faced. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the large wall display, having finished her report about the Council ultimatum. The silence in the room was heavy with the weight of the decision they had to make. "So they want us to become their pets," President Santos said finally. Her voice was calm, but those who knew her could hear the anger underneath. 18 colonies handed over, permanent supervisors telling us what we can and cannot do. Our military reduced to nothing more than a police force. "It's the standard Imperial playbook," Admiral Mitchell replied. "Same thing they did to the Altarians, the Corvin Republic, and a dozen other species over the past few centuries. Demand submission, claim it's for galactic stability, then slowly absorb the target species into their system." Defense Minister Williams leaned forward. "What are our options, realistically? They have thousands of ships. We have maybe 300 in our entire fleet." Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had been quiet until now, smiled slightly. "Actually, Minister, we have significantly more than that. We've been building ships in secret for 50 years, ships they don't know exist." She activated a new display that showed the true scope of human military preparations. The numbers were staggering. Where the Council believed humans had 300 ships, the reality was closer to 800. Hidden shipyards had been producing vessels using hybrid technology that combined human engineering with captured alien systems. But numbers aren't everything, Admiral Mitchell added. "What matters is that we know exactly how they fight, where their ships are positioned, and what their response protocols will be. We've been watching them for decades. They've never watched us." President Santos studied the displays carefully. "Elena, what's your assessment of Council psychology? If we refuse their ultimatum, how will they respond?" "Predictably," Dr. Vasquez replied. "They'll send a fleet to make an example of us. Probably the 3rd Enforcement Fleet, since it's currently positioned in the Rigel sector. They'll choose one of our outer colonies, something that looks vulnerable but important enough to send a message." "New Geneva?" Ambassador Chen asked. "Most likely. It's our newest major colony, appears lightly defended, and has strategic value due to its position on the trade routes. They'll see it as the perfect target for a demonstration." President Santos was quiet for a long moment, considering options that would affect the lives of billions of humans across dozens of worlds. Finally, she looked up at Admiral Mitchell. "Jackson, if we fight, can we win?" The old Admiral's face was grim but determined. "Madam President, I believe we can do more than win. I believe we can end their threat permanently. But it will require us to reveal capabilities that we can never hide again. Once we show our hand, there's no going back to the way things were. The way things were is over anyway," Defense Minister Williams pointed out. "They've made that clear. We either submit or we fight. There's no middle ground." President Santos nodded slowly. Then we make our own terms. Sarah, I want you to return to the Council. But you won't be carrying acceptance of their ultimatum. Ambassador Chen straightened. What message should I deliver? That humanity rejects their demands in their entirety. That we consider their ultimatum an act of aggression against a peaceful species. And that we demand their complete withdrawal from human space, along with reparations for the insult they have offered to our sovereignty. The silence in the room was complete. What the president was proposing was not just a rejection of the council's demands, it was a counter-ultimatum that would be seen as incredibly arrogant by beings who had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Madam President, Colonial Administrator Park said carefully, they will see this as an act of war. Good, President Santos replied, because that's exactly what their ultimatum was to us. The only difference is that we're being honest about it. Admiral Mitchell smiled for the first time since entering the room. How long do I have to prepare? The Council gave us 30 days. We'll give them 10. Sarah, can you deliver our response and be clear of Council space before they react? I'll be back in human territory within 6 hours of delivering the message, Ambassador Chen confirmed. Dr. Vasquez pulled up another display, this one showing communication networks that spanned half the galaxy. I recommend we also send a message to every species currently under Council control. Many of them remember independence. Some of them might be ready to reclaim it. Do it, President Santos ordered. If we're going to change the galaxy, we might as well do it properly. The meeting continued for another 2 hours, finalizing details of what would become known as the Terran Liberation Protocol. By the time it ended, humanity had committed itself to a course of action that would either establish them as a major galactic power or see Earth itself reduced to ashes. 3 days later, Ambassador Chen stood once again in the crystal halls of the Galactic Council. This time, the atmosphere was different. Word had somehow leaked that the humans were planning to reject the ultimatum, and the alien representatives watched her with a mixture of disbelief and anticipation. Zethkar's crystalline form blazed with what his species considered righteous anger. Human representative, you have requested this emergency session. We trust you bring news of your government's acceptance of our reasonable terms. Sarah Chen smiled. It was not a diplomatic smile. It was the kind of smile that a predator shows just before it strikes. Honored counselors, I bring the official response of the United Terran Federation to your recent proposal. She activated a small device that projected her words in a dozen alien languages simultaneously. What she said next would be remembered for centuries. The United Terran Federation categorically rejects all demands made by this council. We consider your ultimatum to be an unprovoked act of aggression against a peaceful species that has violated no galactic laws and threatened no one. The chamber erupted. Alien voices raised in outrage. Translation systems struggled to keep up with the flood of angry words in a dozen languages. But Sarah Chen was not finished. Furthermore, the United Terran Federation demands the immediate withdrawal of all Council military forces from human space. We demand reparations for the insult you have offered to our sovereignty. And we demand a formal apology for your attempt to subjugate a free people. Thexmin roared so loudly that the chamber's acoustic systems momentarily overloaded. You dare make demands of us? We who have ruled this galaxy since before your species learned to make fire? You have 10 days to comply, Sarah continued, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. After that time, the United Terran Federation will take whatever action is necessary to ensure the safety and freedom of our people. High Regent. Valthun's form flickered with patterns that indicated extreme agitation among her species. This is madness. You are 37 worlds against thousands. You are children challenging gods. Sarah Chen's smile never wavered. You'll find out soon enough what children can do when you threaten their families. She turned and walked from the chamber, leaving behind a group of aliens who could not quite believe what they had just heard. Behind her, the council members began shouting demands for immediate military action. Thexman's voice rose above the others. Mobilize the 3rd Enforcement Fleet immediately. We will crush these upstarts before their arrogance can spread to other species. Agreed, Zethkar said, his crystalline form now burning with rage. 200 ships should be more than sufficient to destroy their military and occupy their worlds. We will make an example that the galaxy will never forget. As the council voted unanimously for military action, none of them noticed the small listening device that Sarah Chen had left behind, or the fact that their secure communications were being monitored by human intelligence networks that had been watching them for decades. By the time Ambassador Chen's ship reached the edge of Council space, Admiral Mitchell already knew every detail of their planned response. The third enforcement fleet was moving toward New Geneva, exactly as predicted. The trap was set. Now all that remained was to see who would walk into it. In 10 days, the galaxy would learn whether the age of Council dominance was ending, or whether humanity's brief moment of freedom was about to be crushed forever. The countdown had begun. The third enforcement fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Geneva system like a thunderclap. 200 ships of various sizes and configurations, representing the military might of a dozen different species, all united under the banner of the Galactic Council. It was an impressive sight, enough firepower to reduce a planet to molten slag within hours. Fleet Admiral Korethvas, a seasoned Vorthak commander whose crystalline body bore the scars of a dozen conflicts, stood on the bridge of the flagship Inevitable Justice. His sensors showed him exactly what he had expected to find: a lightly defended human colony with maybe 20 patrol ships and a handful of orbital defense platforms. The humans had positioned their forces around the third planet, clustered, in a defensive formation that looked almost quaint to eyes that had seen real military power. "Analysis complete," reported his tactical officer. 23 human vessels detected. Estimated combat capability minimal. No heavy weapons signatures. No evidence of exotic technology. Korethvas allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The reports had been accurate. These humans were exactly what they appeared to be: a young species with primitive technology and no real understanding of galactic warfare. This would be over quickly. "Open a channel to the human commander," he ordered. "Let us give them a chance to surrender before we begin the demonstration." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of what appeared to be a human heavy cruiser. The man who appeared was wearing a simple military uniform, and his hair showed streaks of gray that indicated middle age by human standards. He looked remarkably calm for someone facing overwhelming odds. "I am Fleet Admiral Korethvas of the Galactic Council Enforcement Division," the Vorthak commander announced. "You are in violation of Council directives. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." The human smiled. It was not the expression Korethvas had expected. There was no fear in it, no desperation. If anything, the human looked pleased. "I am Admiral Jackson Mitchell of the United Terran Federation Navy," the human replied, "and you are trespassing in human space. You have exactly 1 minute to begin withdrawing your forces before I am authorized to take defensive action." Laughter echoed across the bridge of the Inevitable Justice. Korethvas's officers found the human's bravado amusing. 1 minute? Defensive action? Against 200 council ships? "Human, you clearly do not understand your situation," Korethvas said. "We represent the combined military might of 12 galactic civilizations. You have 23 small ships. Mathematics should make your choice obvious." Admiral Mitchell's smile grew wider. "You're absolutely right. Mathematics does make this obvious. You were warned." The transmission cut out, and for a moment, Korethvas wondered what the human had meant. Then his sensor officer's voice cracked with alarm. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. Ships are decloaking." The holographic display at the center of the bridge exploded with new contacts. Ships appeared as if materializing from empty space, not 23 vessels but over 300. They emerged from asteroid fields, from behind planets, from positions that the Council's sensors had marked as empty space. They had been there all along, invisible to every detection system the galaxy's most advanced civilizations possessed. "How is this possible?" Korethvas demanded. "Our sensors showed nothing." "Sir, these ships are using stealth technology that's beyond our current understanding. The energy signatures are completely masked until they choose to reveal themselves." But the real shock was yet to come. As the human fleet revealed itself, Korethvas realized that many of the ships looked familiar. Too familiar. "Tactical analysis," he barked. "Sir, I'm detecting modified Vorthak stealth fields, enhanced Krellian shield generators, and, Admiral, some of these ships are using weapon systems that appear to be based on our own technology, but improved somehow." Korethvas felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature on his bridge. "They've been stealing our technology." "Not stealing," came Admiral Mitchell's voice over an open channel. "Learning. We've been watching you for 50 years, Admiral. We know how your ships work, how your crews fight, how your commanders think. We know the frequency of your shields, the range of your weapons, and the response time of your defensive systems." As if to prove his point, the human fleet suddenly moved, but they didn't attack. Not yet. Instead, they demonstrated something that sent shock waves through every ship in the Council fleet. They moved in perfect coordination, using formation tactics that no human military academy had ever taught, because they were formations that each council species considered classified secrets. The humans were using Vorthak crystal ship networking protocols. They were employing Krellian pack hunting strategies. They were executing Xantharian phase combat maneuvers. They had taken the best tactical knowledge from every council species and combined it into something new. "This is impossible," whispered Korethvas's tactical officer. "These formations are classified at the highest levels. How could they know?" The answer came in the form of intercepted communications between council ships. Voices that sounded like Vorthak officers gave orders in perfect crystalline harmony. Messages that appeared to come from Krellian commanders directed fleet movements with flawless reptilian syntax. But when the encryption was broken, the truth became clear. The voices were human, speaking alien languages with perfect fluency, using cultural references and military terminology that should have taken decades to learn, coordinating with intelligence networks that had been operating undetected for years. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, voice shaking, "I'm detecting listening devices throughout our fleet. They're hearing everything we say. They know our tactical plans before we implement them." Korethvas realized with growing horror that they had walked into something that was not a battle. It was a trap that had been 50 years in the making. "All ships, defensive positions," he ordered. "Prepare for—" His words were cut off as Admiral Mitchell's voice filled every channel in the council fleet. But now he wasn't speaking in human standard. He was speaking in perfect Vorthak crystalline harmony, addressing Korethvas in the ceremonial language that only high-ranking military officers were supposed to know. "Fleet Admiral Korethvas, son of the 7th Crystal Dynasty, graduate of the HFY War College, veteran of the Altarian Suppression Campaign. I know your service record, I know your tactical preferences, I know that you favor frontal assault followed by envelopment using your heavy cruisers, while your destroyers provide covering fire." The Vorthak commander felt his crystalline structure dim with shock. Those details were not in any public record. They were classified military information that only council intelligence should have possessed. "I also know," Mitchell continued, now switching to Krellian war speech, "that Captain Threxmol of your 2nd Battle Group has a tendency to break formation when under pressure, and that Commander Veltar of your Scout Squadron has been drinking fermented algae before duty shifts." Across the council fleet, officers began to realize that the humans knew everything about them. Not just their ships and their tactics, but personal details that should have been impossible to obtain. Details about their families, their careers, their weaknesses, their fears. "You want to know how we learned all this?" Admiral Mitchell asked, his voice now carrying across all frequencies. "We asked. We've had people living among you for decades. Traders who spoke your languages. Diplomats who shared your meals. Scientists who studied your cultures. You welcomed us because we seemed harmless, because we appeared weak and naive." The human fleet suddenly moved into an attack formation that was simultaneously familiar and alien. It used elements from every council species' tactical doctrine, but combined them in ways that created something entirely new. Something that none of the council commanders had ever seen before, but which countered every standard defensive strategy they knew. "You were right about one thing," Mitchell said. "Mathematics does make this obvious. You have 200 ships using predictable tactics that we've studied for 50 years. We have 300 ships using hybrid strategies that you've never encountered, supported by intelligence networks that know your every move before you make it." "This cannot be," Korethvas whispered. "You are a young species. You are primitives who barely understand spaceflight." "We are humans," Mitchell replied. "And humans learn. We adapt. We prepare. Most importantly, we remember what happens to those who threaten our children. The attack, when it came, was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, targeting specific systems rather than going for immediate kills. Council shields were penetrated by weapons that knew exactly what frequencies to use. Navigation systems were disabled by electronic warfare techniques that bypassed every security protocol. Communication arrays were jammed by signals that used the Council's own encryption methods against them. Within 2 hours, every ship in the 3rd Enforcement Fleet was drifting powerless in space, not destroyed, but completely disabled. The crews were alive but helpless, watching in stunned silence as human boarding. Parties moved through their vessels with maps that showed every corridor, every security checkpoint, every hiding place. Admiral Mitchell's final transmission, the emergency session of the Galactic Council, convened in chaos. For the first time, in 10,000 years, the crystal halls that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations echoed with something that had never been heard before. Fear. The 12 species that had maintained galactic order through strength and intimidation now found themselves confronting a reality that their ancient minds could barely process. Zethkar's crystalline form flickered with patterns of distress as he received the final reports from the New Geneva system. Total defeat. Every ship disabled. Not destroyed, disabled. As if the humans were playing with us. Thexmin paced the chamber like a caged predator, his massive reptilian form radiating frustration and rage. 200 ships. The third enforcement fleet represented the combined military might of 4 different species. How does a primitive civilization accomplish something like this? High Regent Valthun's translucent form shimmered with what? Her species called terror patterns. The reports from our survivors are disturbing. The humans knew everything. Fleet positions, tactical preferences, even personal details about individual officers. They have been watching us for decades. Elder Korthine, the ancient Virelian whose 4,000-year lifespan had seen the rise of the current galactic order, spoke with a voice that trembled for the first time in centuries. I have studied the tactical recordings. The human fleet used combat formations from every one of our species. They knew our classified military doctrines better than our own officers. Counselor Nexus, the artificial intelligence representing the machine worlds, processed the data with its usual logical precision, but even its electronic voice carried an undertone of something approaching concern. Analysis indicates that human intelligence penetration of Council space has been comprehensive and ongoing for approximately 50 standard years. Conservative estimates suggest the presence of human assets in 14 of our major systems. The implications of that statement sent shockwaves through the chamber. If humans had intelligence networks throughout Council space, if they had been watching and learning for 50 years, then every military secret, every political negotiation, every strategic plan might be compromised. How many of our allies know about this defeat? Asked Regent Mazara of the aquatic Telrani. All of them, Thexmin growled. The humans made sure of that. They broadcast the entire battle on open frequencies. Every species under Council protection saw their mighty fleet. Reduced to floating debris by humans they were told to consider primitive. That was when the real crisis began. Within hours of the New Geneva battle, reports started flowing in from across Council space. The Deltarian Republic, subjugated 40 years earlier, had declared independence and expelled their Council overseers. The Corvin Confederacy was mobilizing its hidden defense fleets. The Altarian resistance, thought crushed decades ago, had emerged from hiding and taken control of 3 star systems. More disturbing were the reports from species that had been loyal Council members for centuries. The Zelkaran Trade Union was demanding renegotiation of their membership terms. The Thursian Mining Collective was questioning why they needed Council protection when the Council itself could not protect its own fleets. Even some of the older, more established members were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about the Council's continued relevance. They planned this, Valthun whispered. The humans did not just prepare for military confrontation. They prepared for political revolution. Dr. Elena Vasquez would have been pleased to know how accurately the Council had assessed the situation. Even as the last Council ships were being disabled at New Geneva, her intelligence networks were activating. Across the galaxy, messages of support and coordination were flowing to resistance movements that had been thought extinct. Weapons caches hidden for decades were being opened. Leaders who had submitted to Council authority were remembering what independence meant. The human strategy had never been simply to defeat the Council militarily. It had been to demonstrate that the Council could be defeated, and then let the galaxy draw its own conclusions. What are our military options? Zethkar asked. Though the question sounded hollow even to him, Thexmin's laugh was bitter. Against an enemy who knows our every tactic and has neutralized our most powerful fleet without losing a single ship? What options do we have? We could deploy the first and second enforcement fleets simultaneously, suggested Counselor Roth, of the Makari hive mind. Nearly 600 ships across both formations. To accomplish what? Elder Korthane asked. The humans demonstrated at New Geneva that they can make our ships disappear from sensors at will. They can penetrate our shields with weapons we did not know existed. They can jam our communications and disable our systems using our own security. Protocols against us. Sending more ships will only result in more ships being captured. The truth was becoming clear to all of them, though none wanted to admit it. The Galactic Council's power had always rested on the assumption that they possessed superior technology and overwhelming force. The humans had just proven that both assumptions were false. A new message indicator appeared on the chamber's central display. Admiral Mitchell's face materialized in the center of the room, speaking from what appeared to be the bridge of a captured Council flagship. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice carrying the respectful tone of a diplomat, combined with the absolute confidence of a conqueror. "I am Admiral Jackson Mitchell of the United Terran Federation Navy. I am currently aboard your flagship Inevitable Justice, which is now part of my fleet." The insult was deliberate and devastating. Not only had the humans captured the Council's most powerful warship, but they were using it as a communication platform to address the Council itself. "I'm here to inform you that the United Terran Federation is prepared to accept your surrender and discuss terms for the transfer of galactic authority." Thexmin roared in outrage. "Surrender? You want us to surrender to you?" Mitchell's expression remained calm. "Counselor Thexmin, I have here a complete record of your species' suppression of the Corvin Confederacy 15 years ago. I also have documentation of illegal weapons testing on inhabited worlds, violation of your own laws regarding civilian casualties, and evidence of what can only be called war crimes committed during the Altarian campaign." The Krellian's rage faltered as he realized what the human was implying. If humanity had been watching for 50 years, they had records of everything the Council had done during that time. Every military action, every political maneuver, every decision that had been made in secret. "The same applies to all of you," Mitchell continued. "We have comprehensive documentation of Council activities for the past half-century. If you prefer, we can make this information public and let the galaxy decide what should happen to leaders who have ruled through intimidation and suppression." Valthun's form flickered with patterns of defeat. "What do you want from us?" "The immediate dissolution of the Galactic Council as a governing body. The withdrawal of all Council forces from the territories of species seeking independence. And a formal treaty establishing the United Terran Federation as the primary peacekeeping authority in this galaxy." The silence that followed was the sound of an empire dying. For 10,000 years, the Council had been the ultimate authority in galactic affairs. They had decided which species could expand and which must remain confined. They had determined who deserved independence and who needed guidance. They had maintained order through strength and fear. Now they were being offered the choice between voluntary dissolution and forced removal by a species they had considered primitive just days before. Elder Corthane was the first to speak. "And if we refuse?" Mitchell's smile was not unkind, but it was utterly confident. "Then we will continue to demonstrate the consequences of threatening humanity and its allies. Your fleets will be disabled one by one. Your intelligence networks will be exposed and eliminated. Your subject species will declare independence with our support. And eventually, you will discover that the galaxy no longer needs your version of order." Over the following weeks, the transformation was swift and irreversible. Some Council species chose to flee to distant galaxies rather than face the consequences of their past actions. Others submitted formally and were granted protectorate status under the new Terran-led galactic government. A few attempted to resist and found their military forces disabled just as efficiently as the Third Enforcement Fleet had been. The wisest among them, like Elder Corthane and a reformed faction of the Vorthak, approached humanity as equals and were welcomed as founding members of the new Galactic Alliance. They discovered that humans were not interested in ruling through fear, but in building something better. 6 months after the Council's ultimatum, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the same crystal halls where she had once been threatened and humiliated. But now she was signing the founding charter of the Galactic Alliance, surrounded by representatives from over 200 species who had chosen cooperation over domination. "The old order promised peace through strength," she said as she signed. The document that